7:30.
Yeah. Okay, we are this week on top of one of, I think, the great mysteries of the spiritual path, which is that we're told that we're created with the divine light within. We're told that our goal is reunion with that light, which is both inside us and within the souls and on the horizons. We're told that has implications for how we treat others. There's a whole divine economy of the world of how the divine relates in the world and how we ought to relate to the divine and how it unfolds in history. But somehow, given that this is the most important fact about the world, somehow it remains hidden from us, essentially hidden. So why should the world have been created with a certain overarching goal, and yet that goal is not visible to us, and even people who spend their whole lives searching for it don't find it? So what is going on here? Why does there have to be? And I think it's somewhat related to the week 2 topic, which was nearness and remoteness. But this, I think, gets at it from another angle. So in these 4 Arabic hidden words, we have different aspects of that divine hiddenness of things. And one aspect of divine hiddenness is that even what we think of as God's attributes are themselves just masks hiding some deeper reality, and that the attribute itself is something more on the surface. And as before, we have a number of quotations from the Baha'i writings, from the Bible, another couple of places, different aspects of this divine hiddenness. So let's start by reading the hidden words and pause maybe to discuss it a bit, and then look at the supplementary passages, which include some new materials, freshly translated by Claude. Claude 3.5, the new translator extraordinaire. O Son of Man, my eternity is my creation. I have created it for thee. Make it the garment of thy temple. My unity is my handiwork. I have wrought it for thee. Clothe thyself therewith, that thou mayest be to all eternity the revelation of my everlasting being.
O Son of Man, my majesty is my gift to thee, my grandeur the token of my mercy unto thee. That which beseemeth me none shall understand, nor can anyone recount. Verily I have preserved it in my hidden storehouses, and in the treasures of my command, as a sign of my loving kindness unto my servants and my mercy unto my people.
O children of the divine and invisible essence, ye shall be hindered from loving me, and souls shall be perturbed as they make mention of me. For minds cannot grasp me, nor hearts contain me.
O Son of Beauty, by my spirit and by my favor, by my mercy and by my beauty, all that I have revealed unto thee with the tongue of power, and have written for thee with the pen of might, hath been in accordance with thy capacity and understanding, not with my state and the melody of my voice.
So, why is it the case that God wants so badly to be loved, but that love is hidden? Why make it hard for us to attain if that's all that God wants? I mean, if you were the creator of a universe and you wanted it to go the way you wanted it to, which is, as the metaphor goes, God wanted to be loved, so created the universe to be loved. So that defines all the processes of the universe, from the physical processes to the spiritual processes. It all has to do with the fulfillment of this primordial desire of God to be loved. So why make it so hard? Couldn't he have made it a universe in which it was easy to love him?
Yeah, I think the answer is in that last hidden word, isn't it? He says, I've written for thee with the pen of might, has been in accordance with thy capacity and understanding, and not with my state and the melody of my voice. So there is some fundamental truth that's pretty unhidden as far as I can tell, which is that humans don't get it.
Mm-hmm.
And if the structures of our understanding and our appreciation of love and beauty and all of the things that are the deepest parts of us that reside in the heart of God, if those are points of perpetual struggle within us, then it doesn't change your question. It's still, well, why did God do it that way?
Yeah.
Or you could say God doesn't need our love. God is sufficient unto God. And if God absolutely needed our love, he wouldn't have given human beings freedom. Because with freedom, there's no guarantee, that humans will love him back.
Mm-hmm.
So I've just never sort of intuited that God created everything in order to be loved. I don't know.
It's like a proven or not tested love, but there are people who this is so not the right metaphor or relevant, but it's, you want to know, if someone loves you, you want to know that they know what they love, right? It's not like, oh, I told you to love me and it was easy and all you have to do is love me. But if you have to be tested, if you have to search within yourself, you have to really prove and overcome obstacles to get to that love, then on both sides it's just so much more powerful. I don't know.
But back to your question, which was like, what would you do? Being a mom, I don't think I would have made it hard for my children to love me. I would have made it easier. I think I would have done too much on their, maybe enabled them too much. And I think a lot of that has to do with who God is, unknowable. But he's not like us. He wouldn't have made it easy for us. We would have made it easy for us because that's what we do. We always make things easy for us. Even our technology is to make it easier for us.
I think there must be some real benefit for us that we have to do the proving and all of these things, because it's if it was easy, then what would be the point of existing? What would be? It would kind of be boring. There would be no progress really, because you'd already be there. I know we're taking that idea of just loving is a different thing than everything being perfect, but there must be, it must be that we need to realize that it is important and necessary, and that there's a lot of good perks that go along with it, So we have to discover these things.
I like the idea of assuming the counterfactual, which we talked about, I think, a few weeks ago. So supposing the universe was so constructed that God's existence was literally written in the stars. You looked up and there was a constellation that said, I'm here, or something like that. There was just no question in anybody's mind that this was, this was the creation, and what sort of creation would it be then? Would God be genuinely loved in such a world? Another way I think about it is in terms of if the overall way of thinking about the universe is that it's the one God, or the Neoplatonian one, the one becomes many and then it becomes one again. If that's the story of creation, then here we are in the state of the many. We're in a world which is characterized by the many, and we came from one and we're returning to one. That's the big picture story. What does it mean to be many? For it to be many, it means that there has to be some sort of separation between the different many things. And maybe embedded in that separation is the hiddenness of the divine. Because if the divine wasn't hidden, then there would actually be no separation. And if that proceeding from the one to the many to the one again, as Abdu'l-Baha says, is like the circle of existence, it's the arc of descent and the arc of ascent, then if you take away the divine hiddenness, it's like taking that circle and shrinking it so it has a radius of 0. So you can almost say it's a geometrical proof of the of the need for divine hiddenness, is that otherwise, because you can't have a circle with radius 0. There has to be for there to be a circle, there has to be the movement from the one to the one. It's a kind of highly, I guess, philosophical way of explaining the problem of evil, the problem of the one and the many, the problem of divine hiddenness. It all kind of falls. Maybe it's not a convincing way of doing it, but
This also seems like depending on your perspective, on your point of view, that all of these things are sort of illusions that we create. The differences that the many may be in our own minds, that we as imperfect beings who can't quite understand the wholeness, the one, have created this image of difference. And we differentiate, and especially in the material world.
And it's an illusory veil. It's the veil of Maya.
It's not real.
The Hindus had this figured out thousands of years ago, the idea
I thought I just came up with
of
it.
Maya.
You're about 2,000 years behind.
You're vibing with the Upanishads. I have a couple of quotes from the Upanishads, which is going to say what you're saying, I think.
I'd like to ask a question about how this relates to knowing. I mean, the whole problem of something being hidden means I don't know it. But isn't the tension of the depth of love being the tension to know the beloved? And if the beloved is unknowable, then it's destined always to remain hidden. But it's calling me, because the more I love, the more I'm going to seek out that object of my love. And while I can't exhaust it with my faculty of coming to know, I don't know even what that faculty means. It means I look at it? Does it mean I think about it? Does it mean I compare one image of it to another image of it, and that gives me, some triangulation around deeper awareness of it? I don't really know quite what knowledge means, but it just seems that if I can't know God, which I will accept that I can't, because he is inexhaustible, then I can't hold it against God for being hidden. So, I mean, that may be a way of responding to your question, is why did God do it? Because God can't not be God, and we can't be God. So we're kind of stuck. And yet it's a beautiful, wonderful dynamic of stuckness that keeps us driving toward our own depth, not just the depth of God.
Well, let's read some passages on the hiddenness of God. And starting from a hadith of Islam, one of the most celebrated hadiths of Islam, which is not in the Quran, but it's a reported saying of the Prophet, speaking through the voice of the divine. Abdu'l-Baha wrote an extended commentary of this hadith, and Baha'u'llah refers to it several times also in his major works. And Abdu'l-Baha says that this basically sums up the whole cosmic story as well. I was a hidden treasure. I loved to be made known, and thus I called creation into being in order that I might be known. It's interesting here that love and knowledge get kind of collapsed into each other. So knowing God and loving God becomes almost the same thing.
Say, God hath made my hidden love, the key to the treasure. Would thou ye might perceive it. But for the key, the treasure would to all eternity have remained concealed. Would thou ye might believe it.
Indeed, he was a hidden treasure. There was a station that can never be described nor even alluded to. And in the station of I did wish to make myself known, God was, and his creation had ever existed beneath a shelter from the beginning, hath no beginning, apart from it being preceded by a firstness, which cannot be regarded as a firstness of, and originated by a cause, inscrutable even unto all men of learning.
And he, Moses, said, I beseech thee, show me thy glory. And he, God, said, Thou canst not see my face, for there shall no man see me and live.
Verily, thou art a God that hidest in thyself, O God of Israel, the Savior. Is that still me?
Oh, okay. I can read. I praise you, Father, Lord of heaven and earth, because you have hidden these things from the wise and learning, and revealed them to little children. Yes, Father, for this is what you were pleased to do.
The divine within us is hidden. In thine outward appearance thou tellest of the appearance of power in the realms of divine creation. In thine inward being thou revealest the hidden mysteries, which are the divine trust deposited within thee.
Reflect upon the perfection of man's creation, and that all these planes and states are folded up and hidden away within him. Dost thou deem thyself a small and puny form when thou foldest within thyself the greater world?
The purpose of the one true God, exalted be his glory, in revealing himself unto men, is to lay bare those gems that lie hidden within the mine of their true and inmost selves.
The purpose of the one true God, exalted be his glory, hath been to bring forth the mystic gems out of the mine of man, they who are the dawning places of his cause and the repositories of the pearls of his knowledge. For God himself, glorified be he, is the unseen, the one concealed and hidden from the eyes of men.
To gather jewels have I come to this world. If one speck of a jewel lie hid in a stone, and that stone be beyond the 7 seas, until I have found and secured that jewel, my hand shall not stay from its search. He saith, exalted be he, God, exalted be his glory, hath sent a trusted one in every age to bring forth the mystic gems from the mine of man.
Sow the seeds of wisdom and knowledge in the pure soil of the heart, and keep them hidden, till the hyacinths of divine wisdom spring from the heart, and not from mire and clay.
O soul, most beautiful of creatures, who ardently longs to know the place where beloved is, that you may seek him and to be united to him. You yourself are the tabernacle where he dwells, the secret room where he is hidden. Rejoice and exult, then, because all your good and all your hope is so near as to be within you. To speak more accurately, you cannot be without him, for the kingdom of God is within you.
So maybe you can just pause there because there's a lot here to talk about. So maybe there's something here about the hiddenness being a stage in the evolution of things that, and maybe we'll see this more in the quotes to come, that the universe is, if the universe is a process of proceeding from God and returning to God, then there has to be a moment where it hasn't yet returned. There has to be a potentiality that's realized. And in this world of the many, it's the world in which that potentiality, that gem, the mystic gem hidden within, is discovered. And in the process of that discovery, is the process of the many becoming one again, of the hidden being revealed. Why would God say to Moses, "You cannot see my face, for there shall no man see me and live"?
I'm wondering, in that same quote, is "chew" a typo, or is that a word that I?
That's a King Jamesian.
That's what I was going to
for
ask
show.
you. Are you
Is
using
it?
King James version? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Is that because Shogi Effendi said to use it?
Where is that?
I'm just used to it, I guess.
The bottom of the first
Because
page.
Show
the
that.
translations in King James version are not necessarily the most accurate translations.
That's true. I mean, there's an RSV, which is like Revised King James.
The new
Yeah.
version is the
The
most.
second to the last
More
one.
accurate.
It was like
Last word,
you're
"chew."
not allowed to use
Shoe
King James version in
category.
Bible school.
The one I'm quoting from may actually be the Revised King James version. Actually, I don't think it's the original King James. I think it's the Revised King James. But it still has these archaisms like shoe.
Yeah.
I think it's show, but it's spelled "chew." Yeah, that's what I was.
One comment I have is this. So, in Abrahamic dispensation, in Abrahamic, pretty much literally, they have been given us a model. And the model is God, we go through the cycle, we separate from the sun, we are raised, we go and circle back to the sun. So that's one model of understanding, right?
Yeah.
In Buddhism, there's a different type of model, right? It says consciousness. Just know your consciousness. You are a conscious being, this and that. There are so many things, but they're completely different models. Now, my question is this. In order for us to understand this very, very complex thing, Abrahamic prophets have given us a model, which is this model, and has been progressed by Baha'u'llah, and it's much more complicated. But the question is this: it seems like it is so complex that we have to have a model in place for us to understand, and simple model to understand.
Maybe we make it complex.
What's that?
Maybe we're the ones that make it complex. I mean, what can be more simple than a circle? What can be more simple than the one becoming many, becoming one again? You can't come up with a simpler scheme.
That's true.
And it's in the level of the many that things appear complex. But if you take enough steps back, then the simplicity of the whole scheme emerges.
So it's as simple and complex as at the same time. Is that what you're saying?
No, I think we are what's making it complex. God
If you
is-
zoom out, it's simple.
Yeah.
If you zoom in, you get lost in all the complexities of the exigencies of the time and place and all the do's and don'ts and thou shalt and thou shalt nots and big lists of things to keep track of and things you can and can't do, and all of that is just at the level of zoom in, though. I mean, you zoom out far enough and all of that kind of goes away, and you're left with, the fundamental motion of creation, which is some form of of love, self-generative love.
What's that first sentence in the Kitab Das, the most hidden, where Baha'u'llah says these laws were made? How's it go? I can't remember. But it's the concept of like these laws are not made simply for you to abide by them.
Think not that we are revealed unto you a mere code of laws, nay, rather have we unsealed the choice wine with the fingers of might and power.
So back to that model. So if it is simple, let's say if my brain and my mind was as powerful as ChatGPT, then things become much simpler.
Or Claude.
Or Claude. So you see what I'm saying? It's the computing power that is not there. That's why it's so complex. My computing power much higher, I would understand a much complex model. ChatGPT has such a complex model to understand things and put things in the right place, right?
I don't think that's true. Most of them, for instance, many of the stories in the Bible, Christ always refers to the meek, the poor, the ones that are considered the most, they have nothing, they have no means. Like when he was talking about when someone sacrifices their money, he said that this lady had one penny to give. I'm paraphrasing it. But when she gave that penny, she gave the most wealth out of that one penny because of the simplicity, her simple love, her simple faith was undoubting, was unwavering. But they always refer to those that are far from all of the complexity of the world. They're not submerged in all of this greed, or they're not submerged in all of this complexity. It's just very simple, just to love with a pure heart. Like that, I feel like that's kind of what resonates in my mind when you're saying these things. Is come back to the most simplistic thing. You know how whenever we're going into a really hard struggle in life, and then when we look back on it, like, oh man, I made it bigger than it needed to be, or like I feel like that's what's coming to my mind when we're reading these things. Is that like, yeah, I think we do make it overcomplicated. Love is love.
It sounds like you're talking about intellectual understanding, and you're talking about spiritual understanding and reality, and I think you need both, and they're good tools to have, but many times, we can completely put a barrier up over the spiritual truths by trying to understand them intellectually, perhaps.
And maybe we don't need to understand them intellectually, or maybe we do. Maybe, I don't know.
We have many paths to enlightenment, right?
So your path to enlightenment is to think about it to death. Mine is to figure out how not to think about it to death.
And it seems like the goal of contemplation is to arrive at what St. John of the Cross is saying, which is to get out of the mind, that the mind overly complexifies. Get out of the mind and find presence, God's presence right in us. And that's attaining a state of unity right there.
And the quotation from Matthew is also relevant to this, that I praise you, Father, Lord of heaven and earth, because you have hidden these things from the wise and learned and revealed them to little children. Yes, Father, for this is what you are pleased to do. And then, another reference where he says, you have been like, unless you become as little children.
Yeah. Because they have such a simple love, such a simple, it's a very simple way of thinking about things. It's literal.
They don't have the capacity, they're not educated, they're not grown to manage the complexity and to look for meaning in the complexity. They don't have that. So he's praising God for that fact, that that's how God has created these children.
I'll speak of children in the be as children who are pure of heart.
Where is that one?
So that was another the many weeks I was here.
We're coming up on more children in the next section or two.
I was going to say that I think another aspect of it is it's more equitable if your intelligence is not a requirement. Meaning the intellect is not a requirement for understanding.
If it were, it'd be kind of unjust.
Everyone has access.
Yeah.
It would be unjust.
That would be unjust.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you know, the world's problem is not simple.
Yeah.
World's problem is so complex. We cannot take a screwdriver to fix a microprocessor. We cannot. And that's what I always challenge with is that this model that has been given to us is too simplified. God is the greatest and has all these attributes. This is not enough to fix this problem that we have in the world.
Yeah.
That's what I have challenged with this.
Are
So
you
if
sure?
somebody,
Are you sure? Because if we really understood love, then the problems of the world we'd figure out. I mean, because if we really were coming from love for God, for humanity, and that was our driving force, then injustice would disappear because we couldn't bear it, and then the logistics of making sure everybody has what they need would be child's play at that point. So I
You
don't
would
know.
see people
I'm
as
not
they
sure I'm
are.
convinced that it really is complex.
I was thinking the same thing.
I think it's more complicated. You're a parent. Imagine a parent. It's a parent who's got a teenage kid. This is an old one. There's mom and there's dad. Got a teenage kid. The teenage kid has done something wrong. And mommy says, oh, doesn't understand yet. You need to, it's okay. And dad says, got to suffer the consequences. Both love the child intensely. But their solution, because they love the child intensely, is completely different. So it's complicated. Just loving humanity isn't going to solve the problem, because we have different solutions based on the condition of the humanity.
What I hear Kim saying is like, where there's love is will. Where there's love, there is will. Because when you love something, when you love humanity enough, you're willing to come to the table. You're willing to figure it out. You're willing to not see injustice or suffering for that other side. And where there's a will, clearly there's a way. People will figure out, if we can figure out how to get on the moon, we loved that so much, we can figure out a way to come to the table and solve the world's problems. The world problems may be complex, but what I think the biggest barrier is a lack of will and desire to solve them.
And I also see that the love that you had used as an example is imperfect. It's not. It's very common, and I've been in those situations exactly. And I know that yes, I love my kid, but am I doing everything right? No, I'm gonna. So I think the pursuit of trying to come to this perfect understanding and carrying out behaviors that are in that perfect space, obviously a long way to go. In a theoretical way, what Kim was saying makes sense to me. That if you look at it at what we understand about love right now in our society or as human beings, then it's easy to shut down that argument. But if we look at what is beyond our reach maybe right now, then I think that all of these problems disappear little by little. I think they really do. I think that they do become less complex. You probably wouldn't even arrive at that difficult situation in the first place, perhaps. You may have raised your kid differently. Who knows? Who knows?
I hear what you guys say, thinking as love means woo woo, and that's not what I'm hearing.
That's not what I'm saying.
I don't think love is woo woo. I think love is what is motivating us, what drives us, and what doesn't. And it's true that you may have conflicting opinions about what to do, but when you love your partner, you'll sit down and talk it all the way through, and for the love of the union, for the love of that, you'll keep talking.
Well, I'm not trying to say we don't resolve it. What I'm saying is that we don't always agree. We both love and we have different solutions. And the solutions are good depending upon, one of them is right, one of them is wrong, or maybe they're both wrong or
Or they're both partially right.
I don't know. The point is it just because you love something doesn't mean that we are in agreement.
Yeah.
And once you're not in agreement, the solutions become more complicated on how you resolve and solve problems.
Yeah.
And part of the problem, here's how everything I've read fits. If I can imagine myself being transported in time, going back a couple thousand years, 3,000 years, 4,000 years, I'm being transported back in time. Okay? And now I need to deal with the people who were there at that time. I couldn't tell them anything at all about what's going on in this life, in this world out. It would mean nothing to them and they wouldn't understand. They would be absolutely, completely, couldn't understand what you're saying. You couldn't explain to them about what life, I mean, to them, 30 miles away is a long ways, right? That's a life. Everything that we know of how they live a life, you know, most of them 3,000 years ago would have been hunter-gatherers. A few of them are living in cities, and the cities are a little more complex than hunter-gatherer, and the rules and how you survive and how you live together, it's a little more complex. Certainly, concept of a world that exists around the globe is beyond their comprehension. First of all, they don't even know that they're on a globe, let alone what it would mean.
And we're all instantaneously connected.
And instantaneously
crazy
connected.
thing that's
I know
happened
something
in
that's
our
going on
lifetimes.
on the other side of the world, instantaneously. This is beyond their comprehension. This is like magic. And so you have a limited ability to describe what needs to happen now in the future. I think the manifestation is trying to tell us the same thing right now. Look, guys, you're like the people 3,000 years from now. There's a lot more ahead of us. And what I'm trying to tell you is stuff that is going to be good for a long time down the road. And I can't even explain it to you because you can't understand it. You don't have the ability, you don't have the experiences, the life experiences haven't occurred yet to give you that understanding. To what I'm trying to tell you.
I have many things to say, but you cannot bear it.
And you cannot bear it if you were to understand it. That's where I think.
Let's read the next.
If you put it in no sense, then all of this makes sense to me.
Let's read the next bunch of quotes because they have some great stuff about people not being able to bear it. Okay, more good stuff to come. So we have a section on divine hiddenness, sort of within creation that becomes manifested. We have something on the prophet and divine hiddenness, and then something on the hiddenness of the word of the prophet. O essence of negligence, myriads of mystic tongues find utterance in one speech, and myriads of hidden mysteries are revealed in a single melody. Yet alas, there is no ear to hear, nor heart to understand.
I beg of God that He will assist thee to comprehend the mysteries that lie in the heart of creation, and will draw away the veil from before thine eye and thy sisters, that the well-guarded secret may be disclosed unto thee, and the hidden mystery be revealed as clear as the sun at noonday.
We all saw that coming.
The grace of God is beating down upon mankind, even as the rains in spring and the rays of the manifest light have made this earth to be the envy of heaven. But alas, the blind are deprived of this bounty. so that even as flooding waters, this endless stream of grace passeth back into its primal source in the hidden sea. Only a few receive this grace and take their share of it.
Papa said he wanted more.
What's us? That the hidden mystery may stand revealed, and the secret essence of all things may be disclosed. Strive ye to banish that darkness forever and ever. The Lord hides himself away from his powers of Maya, and so creates in the world.
Some more?
Top of page 3.
You can read mine.
Top of here?
You don't see?
I'm confused. So we finished this, we go back here?
We're top of page 3.
The very top.
Oh, 3.
Page 3 at the top.
That which
he
cannot
has-
be
he doesn't
read
have-
by Mehan may
He doesn't
not
have
be
it.
revealed
Oh,
as
there.
earth.
It's hidden.
They were stuck together. That which can be expressed by speech, by which speech is expressed, that alone know as Brahman, and not that which people are here worship.
Could you explain that, Stephen? That last one?
Well, I'll reread it. That which cannot be expressed by speech, but by which speech is expressed, that alone know as Brahman, and not that which people here worship.
What is that?
What's
What is the
Brahman?
last
It's amazing.
part,
So
though?
Brahman is that by which speech is expressed, not the things that words express. You know, the reality of Brahman, that the hidden reality of the divine, cannot be expressed in words, but it's the thing through which all words find expression. It's almost like Paul Tillich saying, you know, God is not a being, but God is the ground of being. It's a move in that direction.
The essence.
Yeah, like the essence is beyond the words. And he says that's Brahman. He says not that which the people here worship, because the people of his time were worshiping the idols and sort of the outer forms.
Well, and pretty much any time, right?
Yeah.
Because whatever we think we're worshiping, it's not really God.
Yeah. Yeah, Abdu'l-Baha said it beautifully. He said everyone is worshiping the idols of their own false imaginations. He doesn't confine it to certain peoples. He says, and they call it real. He said, whereas a stone has more reality than these idols. He says you should just worship the stones rather than worship these imaginations that you call God. You're better off.
The stone has more integrity.
Yeah.
I'm still stuck in that complexity.
That's okay.
This says it. This says it. Language cannot describe
Language
it.
can't
It's complex. It's more complex than our language.
Well, once you take away the words, doesn't it potentially become a lot more simple? It's the language that complexifies it.
It's all those words that get in the way.
It's all the words that get in the way. Take away the words, and
Your meaning of those words.
the thing
for-
that's left is...
You hold too much stake at the words. Like, you know, curse words, for instance. Like, if we make them too big of a deal, then they are a big deal. But then, I mean, my grandmother would never admit to that.
Let's bring in Leon and ask him.
Ask Leon what his favorite word is. I didn't teach
We
it.
remember.
You have to keep
You
telling
said,
yourself
I
it's
love
just
that
a word.
word. Before you
Just
said
a word.
FCK,
Oh, no.
His favorite word is the F word.
I love it. You just
Mommy.
heard it.
Mommy, I love that word. I do too, but we don't say it.
Mommy,
Yes, baby.
can you get more water?
I'll do it.
But I want to just say, I'm sympathetic to that view. Makran, is that, am I pronouncing it correctly? Because, you know, well, let me ask you guys, what is consultation all about?
Oh yeah,
Is
what
it
is
consultation
it?
exactly what he's talking about? that we're trying to start from a place of love. We're doing the best we can to have the Spirit turn love into some conversational piece that can create justice, that can build balance, that can unite people who are in disagreement, who are broken-hearted toward each other. All of those things, we're trying our best to do that, but it's the Spirit that does it, so it doesn't lose its simplicity. And yet, consultation can be pretty complicated, I think.
It can, but it requires detachment. That is the main goal of the main essence of consultation.
But that doesn't change the problem. I mean,
it doesn't. Detachment in and of itself is complex. Like not holding any ego to what your point of view is, or not being insulted by other people not liking your point of view, because your point of view or your comment or whatever is part of a collective agreement or a collective unity versus I own these words and I think I am so great because I said them. Like that's the detachment of it.
I understand that. I guess I'm just saying that if the struggle is about how do I get from the purity and simplicity of love into a world that has extraordinarily complex features to it. And in particular, if the purpose of entering that world is to build justice, then there's got to be some way, and I thought this is what consultation is about, is that people doing what you just described, it's about detachment, but it's also about crafting an image of a problem from the standpoint, as best we can muster, of the mind and heart of God. And it's complicated. You don't deny the complexity of it. I mean, like when Abdul Baha talks about, the two wings of the bird, there's the spirit and then there's the intellect. And I think there's a lot of respect there for complexity when you talk about intellect, because it's all about distinctions.
Sure.
But I think it's true that if we're struggling, it may be that we are making things too complex, and that looking at the example of simplicity might be the way out of it. It may be it's sort of not necessarily what you would assume. I've got to keep working on this problem. I've got to use all my faculties, mental faculties. But sometimes the lesson really lies in that some sort of simple lesson that a child could understand. And sometimes I think whether it's in consultation or conflict, it's, if you look at the conflict in the Middle East, and they're going to have peace talks, and there's just all of these things that different factions have done, and they've got to sort it all out. And yet, what would solve that problem? Pure love, and an understanding of the oneness of humanity, which is a simple concept in one sense.
Well, that's what makes it complex, is that not everyone is on the same page.
Right.
Yeah.
What makes it complex is that
Is
we
our own
can't
human
all get
limitation.
to love and the highest sense of love.
Yeah.
And
That's what makes it complicated.
And we're not downplaying that life is not extremely complex and intellectual in that regard. It's obviously we're so ingrained in what we believe, and it's even hard to get our own minds to change and shift. But I think we're just trying to focus on the simplicity of it as well, which is if we take ourselves completely away from all of it, just like in Buddhism and mindfulness, when you're detaching yourself from the emotion, you acknowledge that it exists, but you're not attached to it.
As we sit here, our bodies are doing amazing things. Right now, there are certain hormones in my bloodstream that is causing my thinking to go this way or that way. My neurons are firing. The entire body is just so complex. I cannot describe how complex this system is, and I have no understanding of it. Absolutely don't care if my nail is growing or not. This is just my body. How can we say divine is simple?
I don't think we are.
This is so complex.
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to say is, God has given us a model, but that model is simple for us to understand. It's much more
Are you
complex.
questioning God?
Actually, sometimes
I think you want us all to question with you. But I understand. I think I understand what you're saying.
Well, how else could God do it than give us a simple model, suited to our
That's
capacity? Yeah. I mean, what else would you propose if you were God?
You know, part of the reason is I see the whole situation back in my own country when I was born is all this stuff is also these clergies are talking about these type of stuff. They are. But look what's going on there. They're saying one thing and they're killing all these youth and they're diminishing the entire. So
because they actually don't have a love for their.
Actually, they use love also.
But they don't
That's
actually
the issue.
have it. You can use the word, as it says, you can express the words, and the words can express the thing. You can say it all you want. It's not the same as the thing.
Let's finish
No, but
page
I
3.
get what you're saying. That body analogy is really beautiful, perfect to get what you're getting at.
It
Because
is,
there's all sorts of things that you cannot understand. I certainly don't want someone who is not a doctor and understands the complexity to be dealing with my body, right? So maybe that's part of it, is that maybe there are too many people that take things too simply that aren't understanding complex things.
You want me to pick up?
Yeah.
Hiddenness and the prophet. I testify that thou wast a hidden treasure wrapped within thine immemorial being, and an impenetrable mystery enshrined in thine own essence. Wishing to reveal thyself, thou didst call into being the greater and the lesser worlds, and didst choose man above all thy creatures, and didst make him a sign of both of these worlds. Thou didst raise him up to occupy thy throne before all the people of thy creation. Thou didst enable him to unravel thy mysteries, and to shine with the lights of thine inspiration and thy revelation, and to manifest thy names and thine attributes. Through him thou didst adorn the preamble of the book of thy creation.
How great the multitude of truths, which the garment of words can never contain. How vast the number of such verities, as no expression can adequately describe, whose significance can never be unfolded, and to which not even the remotest allusions can be made. How manifold are the truths which must remain unuttered until the appointed time is come. Even as it hath been said, not everything that a man knoweth can be disclosed, nor can everything that he can disclose be regarded as timely, nor can every timely utterance be considered as suited to the capacity of those who hear it. Of these truths can be disclosed only to the extent of the capacity of the repositories of the light of our knowledge.
Were one to reveal all that is now hidden, a clamor would arise, for it outwardly conflicteth with the views of the people of outward forms. Yet, if one were to conceal everything, none would attain eternal salvation. The manner in which the ancient beauty walked in Iraq and other lands is a perfect example unto all. Most of the divines in Iraq would present themselves before the countenance of the object of all mankind by day and by night, some as questioners, others as seekers, some as examiners, and yet others as investigators of truth. He, Baha'u'llah, would declare, were we to walk in any other way, the most great separation would take place. In such a case, no one would draw nigh to hearken unto the word of God.
For a newborn child, the father makes babbling sounds, though his intellect may make a survey of the whole world. For the sake of teaching that tongue-tied child, one must go outside of one's own customary manner of speech. You must adopt his language in order that he may learn knowledge and science from you.
When I was a child, I spake as a child, I understood as a child, I thought as a child. But when I became a man, I put away childish things. And that's also companion to the phrase, I see through a glass darkly,
Yes.
then I shall see.
Yes. Number me not with those who read thy words and fail to find thy hidden gift, which as decreed by thee is contained therein, and which quickeneth the souls of thy creatures and the hearts of thy servants.
How strange that the beloved is as visible as the sun, and yet the heedless still hunt after tinsel and base metal. He, the intensity of his revelation, hath veiled him, and the fullness of his shining forth hath hidden him.
It is difficult to comprehend even the words of a philosopher. How much more difficult it is to understand the words of God. The divine words are not to be taken according to their outer sense. They are symbolical and contain realities of spiritual meaning.
This is what Mehran's getting at.
Yeah.
Abdul-Bahá got your back now.
So, I think... Finally. I think you have to blame the society with which you live in for not being able to comprehend.
No, what I was trying to get at is, again, this could be blasphemy, right? But each of us need to create our own models.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This model exists, this is Abrahamic model, but each one of us, as we grow in our spiritual journey, need to create a model that fits ourselves.
That's why it's an independent search for truth.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that actually makes it more robust. I personally think that's the safeguard of religion, is that diversity will actually make it stronger in the end.
So, I have a question, and that is, if, as Baha'u'llah says, as Rumi says so beautifully, you know, the father basically says "goo goo gaga" to the baby, because that's what the appropriate thing to say to the baby. And Baha'u'llah basically says that's how I'm addressing you all. You know, in the hidden words, everything I've revealed is in accordance with your capacity. You know, not with my revelation, not with the state of my voice. So if we take those statements at face value, and part of that also is the imagery of the divine physician. Baha'u'llah says I'm prescribing an illness, I'm diagnosing an illness and prescribing a remedy. So if that's the case, then doesn't that kind of doesn't that kind of make it possible that anything he says can now be, you can always come back and say, oh, well, he's just saying this in relationship to a particular exigency. Oh, he's just saying this to this particular group because that's what this group needs to hear. Oh, he's just telling us this because that's what we need to hear. And it's now, like, literally everything he says,
Is relative.
literally everything he says now becomes potentially relative. It's like, oh, what about the afterlife? Well, we need to believe that this thing exists. You know, what about God? Well, we need to believe that God exists. You know, you can take it all the way to what we consider to be like the core fundamentals and say, well, maybe this is all just in relation to our state, our childhood state, and maybe what he's saying is directionally correct because it's incentivizing us to act in ways that are ultimately in the right direction of things. But like, how much of it can we take as information in the sense of here's correct information about spiritual things?
And what is certitude in that, with that question?
And what becomes certitude? It's like, that, oh, I've received a delivery of correct information? Is that what certitude is? Or is it something else now? I mean, is the whole revelation now something other than, correct information? Maybe it's more inspiration rather than information. Maybe it's more, maybe like the analogy of music is a better analogy, and Baha'u'llah uses that analogy all the time. Yeah. Music is something which is, it's not conveying information per se, but it's uplifting the spirit. It's like it's moving the spirit very powerfully.
I don't see information anywhere in the Baha'i writings, that word. Information is like a dead body compared to knowledge, which is a living body. I mean, it seems like, what's the difference? It's something that's driving that body in its life process that the body itself can't understand. Yeah. But that is extremely real. And so we're holding fast to this word, God, with a conviction that there's a being behind it that is actually the source of life that separates us from the body. And so if I just am clinging for information, I'm clinging to a dead body. Mm-hmm. And at some level, I'm called to just always consult what is at the center of who I am that makes me alive for my search to be relevant, it seems.
I like that. And it's also more the idea of, without the animating features, like what you said, I love the idea about information and knowledge. And you're right, there are people who search and search and search for information, and they just keep wanting to gather information because they don't want to be animated. They don't want to move, that may be fear, who knows what, but there's no real movement when you're just gathering information. You're not being, you're growing. So having love for God, then there's a yearning and a pulling and something that causes a movement, which is what that knowledge of God is for, I guess. But yeah, I like that perspective a lot.
I go back to the talking to a baby, maybe not like newborn, but like toddler years. I feel like it's not like you're telling them completely false stuff. You're just trying to say it in a way that they can understand the essence of what you're trying to communicate. And then that gets more complicated and nuanced, and you can express it more in more detailed ways, and as their capacity grows as they get older. But the essence of what you're saying, I mean, hopefully, right, is not a falsity. And so I think when it comes to like, can we take all of this as relative to, I think that we're then just focusing again on the outward meaning of the words instead of the essence of what's being told to us and taught.
Well, you can't talk to a child in abstracts. You have to tell them stories. Mm-hmm. The stories have an idea behind it. Mm-hmm. The story itself is actually a lie. It's a story. It didn't really happen. Right?
Well, lies is a strong word.
Are you saying that Christ lied to like an entire generation?
The single religion is full of lies.
I hear that.
Well, maybe better to say it's a kind of elevated fiction. Even that's a little bit controversial.
Illustrating a moral.
Yes.
Yeah.
Alternative fact.
Also, I wonder, whatever your thoughts, your actions are what matter.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and that conversation, child needs to know you love them. And in that conversation, even with discipline, that needs to be done with love. That's what they care most about, I think. Maybe not, whether I get to watch my TV show, or not, or I get to have that cookie, maybe that matters more to the child. But underneath that, I think that there's something that kids may not be conscious of, but there's somehow their inner being knows that you love them.
But there's a simplicity to their love that we don't have. Like, I think a lot of times our love as adults are conditional, and a child's love is unconditional. you know.
For a while.
For a while.
Until we mess it
until they
up.
start, yeah,
Until we-
for sure.
until we screw
But
it up.
even the relationship between a child and a parent is unique. You know, like they trust us infallibly. Like everything I say. For instance, I made an accidental comment yesterday of saying we're having an argument. I said, "Oh great, we're going down a rabbit hole," and he looked at me and went, "You're going down a rabbit hole?" And I was like, oh god. And then he's just like, is there rabbits in the hole? Is the hole here? And it became like the entire conversation for the entire day, and I regretted the entire sentence.
But did you see how he got you though?
But he got
you
me
off the topic.
But he did.
He got you.
But I also got him out of bed. So it works in my work too. You're fighting to get out of bed. And so but in those moments I find that like my relationship is so important. Like the words that come out of my mouth are so important. And I think that is there's constant imagery between what we do in our world and the science and what we can see to that relationship that we have with God and that relationship that we have with the spiritual world as well. We can see all kinds of like imagery or like a similar aspects or similar process.
The imagery of the parent talking to the child using language in a different way is a really powerful one. And another imagery that I think is similar but goes in a slightly different direction is one that Joseph Campbell uses. I don't know if he originates it, but he uses it in The Power of Myth. And he says it's the difference between poetry and prose. And because we all have a good intuition about how poetry and prose both use the same words of the dictionary, but poetry, by the way it constructs sentences, like conveys things at a totally different level, where you understand when you're reading poetry that this word in the poem, doesn't necessarily mean the dictionary definition, and the whole sentence, although it may seem to be saying something, it may actually be really reaching at something else, which couldn't really be said in a sentence. And we understand all of that, that's how poetry works. And Joseph Campbell points out that the problem with a lot of religion is that people read their sacred scriptures as prose when they should be reading it metaphorically as poetry. In other words, they're reading the language at the level of this is conveying information, these are bunches of propositional statements, these should be weighed as statements of history, of fact, of whatever. He says, but if they just put on a different set of lenses and read it through the eyes of poetry, you would come up with a whole different meanings for it, and a dimension of the power of it would be unlocked that otherwise wouldn't be there if you just read it out as propositional statements.
Is that why when you're translating, it's less important the realistic aspect of what kind of bird, for instance, than it is the fact that it's part of the imagery, what is being portrayed?
Exactly. That the bird is a perfect example, because in English, the rooster is like, it's not a very poetic bird. It struts around and it's very loud and it's very kind of obnoxious and it wakes you up in the morning. And it's like the imagery of the rooster is not, it's not very elevated in the context of English language, whereas it's very different in Persian and Arabic. And so another great example is samandar. And samandar means lizard. But a lizard is not, definitely not an elevated thing. But Abdul Baha addresses O samandar of the nar, a samandar nar moqade, whatever. A lizard of the fire which has been kindled. And the right translation, is phoenix. And a phoenix is not a lizard by any kind of stretching of the dictionary definition. No, it's very, very different. But it's a much truer translation of the word salamander in the context in which it's used in the Baha'i writings, and to translate it as salamander.
Yeah.
And so there are a lot of examples of this where the dictionary definition is the incorrect translation. It just leads you in the wrong direction. And a literalist can sort of pound the dictionary and say, but you're not translating it correctly. Well,
how does
correctness,
Claude do it then?
Who is Claude?
It's AI that he used on this one You did it more than once, or is it just one?
Just the ones that I
Claude was. I've been looking at Claude, trying to translate first lines of Baha'u'llah's writings, and sometimes it gets it hilariously wrong because
he's Claude.
And sometimes it just gets it wrong in a way that, okay, I understand that Claude would do it this way. Like one of them is Baha'u'llah very often refers to his pen and the sound that the reed pen makes when he's revealing. And Mirza Agha John is scritching away as fast as he can. And, the sound that the pen makes is this high-pitched, scritch. And, when you plug it in, when Baha'u'llah refers to this voice of the pen, Claude will translate it as the scratching of the pen. And it's like, well, that doesn't convey the kind of elevatedness that Baha'u'llah is going for. And Shoghi Effendi had found the phrase, the shrill voice of the pen. So if you read enough of Shoghi Effendi's translations of Baha'u'llah's writings, you're familiar with the phrase, the shrill voice of the pen. And, the way Claude translates it is the scratching of the pen.
Can Claude read all of the writings and to see, determine...
I not to go down this rabbit hole. But I'm wondering, aren't you able to input information that says, here is like Shoghi Effendi's translation of the whole text,
yes.
In both, and then say use this as a model.
So you can prompt it saying translate in the style of Shoghi Effendi, which is what I do, and it still comes up with great things. With the proper pre-prompts, you can give it a vocabulary list and say, when you see these words, translate it in this way. And I'm sure later versions of these AIs are going to do even better, but they're impressive in what they already do.
So you're going to be obsolete very soon. Claude's taking you over.
We all are.
I don't think the work of translators will ever go obsolete.
That would be great if it could do so well.
It's going to be a huge help. It's going to definitely cut the distance to the goal line.
Yeah.
You start on the 50-yard line instead of on the 100-yard line.
Yeah.